Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The sun's gentle rays pierced through the delicate fabric of the curtains, illuminating the room with a soft, golden light. Royal's reflection in the mirror seemed to glow, a captivating sight as the warm radiance bathed their features, revealing a serene beauty in that moment of quiet contemplation. His eyes traced the contours of his reflection, lingering on the crisp white shirt and neatly pressed slacks that had become his daily uniform. With a deep breath, he straightened his tie, a gesture so familiar it felt almost mechanical. Royal's gaze drifted to the closet door, slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of vibrant fabric hidden within. His heart quickened, a mixture of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. Glancing at the clock, he realized he had a few precious moments before he needed to leave for work. With trembling hands, he reached into the closet and pulled out a flowing skirt in a rich burgundy hue. The fabric felt cool and smooth against his skin as he slipped it on, adjusting it carefully around his waist. He turned back to the mirror, his breath catching in his throat at the transformation before him. Gone was the buttoned-up, conservative image he presented to the world. In its place stood someone new, someone free, vibrant, and utterly alive. He twirled, watching the skirt billow around his legs, a smile spreading across his face. "Nova," he whispered, trying out the name that had been echoing in his mind for months. It felt right, like a key sliding into a lock he didn't know existed. The alarm on his phone chirped, snapping him back to reality. With a sigh, Royal carefully removed the skirt, folding it reverently before tucking it away in the closet. As he closed the door, he felt as though he was locking away a part of himself. The drive to school was a blur of traffic and familiar streets. Royal's mind wandered, replaying the morning's brief moment of liberation. He parked his car in the faculty lot, taking a moment to compose himself before stepping out into the crisp autumn air. The halls of Westfield High School buzzed with the energy of students rushing to their first classes. Royal nodded politely to his colleagues as he made his way to his classroom, his outward calm belying the tumult of emotions swirling within him. As his students filed in, Royal forced himself to focus on the task at hand. He was more than just his inner struggles. He was a dedicated teacher with a responsibility to these young minds.
"Good morning, everyone,"
he said, his voice steady and warm.
"Today, we're going to discuss the concept of identity in literature. Can anyone give me an example of a character who struggles with their sense of self?"
Hands shot up around the room, and Royal called on a student in the front row. "Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye," the student offered. "He's trying to figure out who he is and where he fits in the world." Royal nodded approvingly. "Excellent example. Holden's journey is one of self-discovery and rebellion against societal norms. Who else can think of a character grappling with identity?" The discussion flowed, with students eagerly sharing their insights. Royal guided the conversation, encouraging them to dig deeper into the complexities of personal identity and how it shapes a character's actions and relationships. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Royal felt a surge of pride in his students' engagement and thoughtfulness. Yet, as they filed out, chattering and laughing, he couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. How would they react if they knew their teacher's own struggle with identity? The day wore on, a parade of classes and meetings that left Royal mentally exhausted. As he packed up his things to head home, he overheard a conversation between two students lingering in the hallway. "I don't get why Mr. Chen always has to dress so formally," one of them said. "He'd probably be a lot cooler if he loosened up a bit." Royal felt his cheeks flush, grateful that the students couldn't see his reaction. If only they knew how desperately he wanted to loosen up, to let his true self shine through. The drive home was filled with introspection. Royal's mind raced with possibilities and fears. What would it be like to come to school as Nova? Would his colleagues support him? Would his students understand? The questions swirled in his mind, a dizzying mix of hope and anxiety. As he entered his apartment, Royal felt the weight of the day lifting from his shoulders. Here, in the privacy of his own space, he could be himself, or at least explore who that self might be. He changed out of his work clothes, carefully hanging up his shirt and slacks. Then, with a deep breath, he opened the closet and pulled out the burgundy skirt once more. This time, he paired it with a soft, cream-colored blouse he'd ordered online, but never dared to wear outside. Standing before the mirror, Nova, smiled at her reflection. She ran her hands over the fabric, relishing the way it draped over her body. For the first time all day, she felt truly comfortable in her own skin. Nova spent the evening reading, cooking, and simply existing in a way that felt authentic. As she prepared for bed, she found herself reluctant to change back into the pajamas Royal typically wore. Instead, she slipped on a silky nightgown, reveling in the luxurious feel against her skin. As she drifted off to sleep, Nova's mind was filled with visions of a future where she could be herself, not just behind closed doors, but out in the world. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning arrived too soon, the harsh buzz of the alarm pulling Nova from her dreams. With a heavy heart, she tucked away her true self once more, donning Royal's familiar uniform of shirt, tie, and slacks. At school, Royal found himself hyper-aware of every gendered interaction, every casual Mr. Chen that felt increasingly ill-fitting. During his free period, he retreated to the solitude of the faculty lounge, seeking a moment of respite from the constant performance. As he sipped his coffee, Royal noticed a magazine left open on the table. The article that caught his eye was about a teacher who had come out as transgender to their school community. Royal's heart raced as he read about the challenges and triumphs this educator had faced.
Interesting article, isn't it?
Royal startled, looking up to see Ms. Thompson, the art teacher, smiling at him. He nodded, trying to keep his expression neutral. "It's amazing how far we've come in terms of acceptance," Ms. Thompson continued. "But there's still so much work to do. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to navigate that journey, especially in a school environment." Royal felt a lump forming in his throat. "Yes," he managed to say. "It takes incredible courage." Ms. Thompson's eyes softened. "You know, Royal, I hope you know that if you ever need someone to talk to about anything, my door is always open." For a moment, Royal considered confiding in her. The words danced on the tip of his tongue, begging to be released. But fear held him back, and he simply nodded, managing a weak smile. "Thank you, Claire. I appreciate that." As Ms. Thompson left the lounge, Royal's mind was in turmoil. The conversation had stirred up all the emotions he'd been trying to keep at bay. He realized that he couldn't continue living this double life indefinitely. Something had to change. That evening, Nova stood before her mirror once again, this time with determination in her eyes. She pulled out her phone and, with shaking hands, began to research local support groups for transgender individuals. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. Over the next few weeks, Nova began attending meetings of a support group in a neighboring town. There, she found a community of people who understood her struggles, who saw her for who she truly was. For the first time, she felt less alone. At school, Royal found himself subtly pushing boundaries. He started wearing more colorful ties, experimenting with different hairstyles. His students noticed, commenting on his new look with curiosity and, often, approval. During one particularly engaging class discussion on gender roles in classic literature, Royal found himself speaking more openly than he ever had before. "Society often tries to put people into neat little boxes," he said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "But the reality is, human identity is far more complex and fluid than that. It's important to question these norms and think critically about why they exist." A student raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, do you think things are getting better? Like, are people more accepting of different identities now?" Royal paused, considering his words carefully. "I think we're making progress, but there's still a long way to go. It takes courage to be true to yourself, especially when that truth doesn't fit with societal expectations." As he spoke, Royal felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He wasn't ready to come out to his students, not yet, but being able to discuss these issues openly felt like a step in the right direction. After class, a student lingered behind, fidgeting nervously with the strap of their backpack.
"Mr. Chen, can I talk to you about something?" "Of course,"
Royal said, gesturing for the student to take a seat.
"What's on your mind?"
The student, Alex, took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about identity and societal expectations. The thing is, I think I might be non-binary, but I'm scared to tell anyone." Royal felt a surge of empathy and pride. He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm.
"Alex, thank you for trusting me with this.
It takes a lot of courage to explore your identity, especially at your age. Please know that you have support here at school, and there are resources available if you need them." Alex's eyes welled up with tears of relief. "Thanks, Mr. Chen. It means a lot to hear that. I was worried you might not understand." Royal smiled, feeling a connection to this student that went beyond the usual teacher-student relationship. "We're all on a journey of self-discovery, Alex. Some journeys are just more visible than others." As Alex left the classroom, Royal felt a mix of emotions washing over him. He was proud of his students' bravery, but also acutely aware of his own fears holding him back. How could he encourage his students to be true to themselves when he was still hiding his own identity? That evening, Nova sat at her computer, staring at a blank email draft. She had made a decision. It was time to talk to the school administration about her transition. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she tried to find the right words to express her truth. After several attempts, she finally composed an email requesting a meeting with the principal to discuss a personal matter. It was vague, but it was a start. With a deep breath, she hit send, feeling as though she had just jumped off a cliff. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Nova threw herself into her lessons, using her classes as a welcome distraction from the uncertainty of her future. She found herself incorporating more discussions about identity and self-expression into her curriculum, drawing inspiration from her students' enthusiasm and openness. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Nova chose her outfit carefully, a pair of tailored slacks and a blouse that, while still masculine, felt slightly more true to herself than her usual attire. She arrived at school early, her heart pounding as she made her way to the principal's office. Principal Dawson greeted her with a warm smile, ushering her into the office.
Royal, good morning. What can I do for you today?
Nova took a deep breath, steadying herself. Thank you for meeting with me, Principal Dawson. I have something important I need to discuss with you. It's about my identity. Over the next hour, Nova poured out her heart, explaining her journey of self-discovery and her desire to transition. She spoke of her fears, of rejection, of losing her job, of disappointing her students, but also of her hope for acceptance and the chance to be her authentic self in all aspects of her life. Principal Dawson listened attentively, her expression thoughtful. When Nova finally fell silent, the principal leaned forward, her voice kind but firm. Royal, or should I say, Nova, thank you for sharing this with me. Your courage is admirable, and I want you to know that Westfield High School is committed to creating an inclusive environment for all our staff and students. We will support you in your transition, however you choose to proceed. Nova felt tears welling up in her eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. Thank you, she whispered. I was so afraid.
There will be challenges,
Principal Dawson continued.
We'll need to develop a plan for how to communicate this to the staff and students, and there may be some who struggle to understand. But you have my full support, and I believe our school community will rally behind you.
As Nova left the principal's office, she felt as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she could see a future where she could be truly herself, both in and out of the classroom. Over the next few weeks, Nova worked closely with the school administration to develop a transition plan. They decided to start with informing the faculty, then the students and their families. Nova would continue teaching as Royal for the remainder of the school year, gradually incorporating more elements of her true identity before fully transitioning over the summer break. The faculty meeting where Nova came out to her colleagues was nerve-wracking, but ultimately affirming. While there were a few uncomfortable silences and confused looks, many of her fellow teachers offered words of support and encouragement. Ms. Thompson, the art teacher, gave her a tearful hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." As the school year progressed, Nova began to make subtle changes to her appearance. She grew out her hair, experimented with more androgynous clothing, and started wearing light makeup. Her students, ever observant, noticed the changes but seemed to take them in stride. One day, during a class discussion on personal narratives, a student raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, I hope this isn't too personal, but are you going through some kind of change? You seem different lately, but in a good way. Like, happier." Nova felt a moment of panic, but then took a deep breath. This was an opportunity for honesty, for modeling the authenticity she had been encouraging in her students. "You're very perceptive," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am going through some changes, and you're right. I am happier. I'm on a journey of self-discovery, much like the characters we've been studying. It's not always easy, but it's important to be true to oneself." The student nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. Nova noticed a few other students exchanging glances, but the overall atmosphere in the classroom remained supportive and curious. As the end of the school year approached, Nova worked with the administration to craft a letter to be sent to all students and their families, explaining her transition and what it would mean for the upcoming school year. The letter emphasized the school's commitment to inclusivity and respect for all individuals, regardless of gender identity or expression. The responses to the letter were mixed. While many families expressed support and appreciation for Nova's bravery, there were also concerned emails and phone calls from parents who didn't understand or approve of the situation. Nova tried to focus on the positive responses, reminding herself that change often comes with resistance. On the last day of school, Nova stood before her mirror once again. This time, she wore a flowing summer dress, her hair styled in soft waves around her face. She applied her makeup carefully, wanting to look her best for this momentous day. As she walked into the school, Nova felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. The halls were buzzing with the excitement of the last day, but she could feel eyes turning to her as she passed. Some students did double takes, others smiled and waved as if nothing was different. In her classroom, Nova took a deep breath before addressing her students for the final time that year. As you all know by now, I'm going through some changes in my life. Next year, when you return to school, I'll be teaching as Ms. Chen. I want to thank you all for your support and understanding during this journey. The room was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Several students came up to hug her, expressing their support and admiration. Even those who looked uncomfortable or confused seemed to be making an effort to be respectful. As the final bell rang and the students filed out for the summer, Nova felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would not be easy, but she had taken the first steps towards living as her true self. That evening, Nova attended the end-of-year faculty party. She had debated whether to go, unsure of how her colleagues would react to seeing her fully presenting as a woman for the first time. But as she entered the room, she was greeted with warm smiles and congratulations. Ms. Thompson approached her, beaming. "Nova, you look radiant. How does it feel?" Nova smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It feels right, like I'm finally myself." As she mingled with her colleagues, Nova found herself engaging in conversations about more than just her transition. They discussed summer plans, curriculum ideas for the next year, and shared laughs over the trials and tribulations of the past school year. For the first time, Nova felt fully integrated into the social fabric of the school, not as an outsider hiding a secret, but as her complete, authentic self. The summer passed in a whirlwind of changes. Nova began hormone therapy, updated her legal documents, and worked on developing a new wardrobe that reflected her true identity. She also spent time reaching out to LGBTQ+ advocacy groups, seeking to educate herself further and find ways to support others in similar situations. As the new school year approached, Nova felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. How would her students react to the changes? Would she be able to maintain the same level of respect and authority in the classroom? On the first day of school, Nova stood before her mirror once again. She smoothed down her floral print dress, adjusted her necklace, and took a deep breath. "You've got this," she told her reflection. The school halls were alive with the chaotic energy of the first day back. As Nova walked to her classroom, she heard whispers and saw curious glances, but also received many warm smiles and words of welcome. Her first class of the day was a group of seniors, many of whom she had taught the previous year. As they filed in, Nova could see the mix of reactions on their faces: surprise, curiosity, and, in many cases, genuine happiness. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice clear and confident. "For those who don't know me, I'm Ms. Chen. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to Advanced English Literature. Let's start by going around the room and introducing ourselves, sharing our names, pronouns, and one thing we're looking forward to this year." As the introductions progressed, Nova felt a wave of relief wash over her. The students, for the most part, seemed to take her transition in stride. There were a few awkward moments and stumbled pronouns, but the overall atmosphere was one of acceptance and respect. One student, a girl named Emily, lingered after class. "Ms. Chen," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say, you're really brave, and I think it's cool that you're being true to yourself." Nova felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Emily. That means a lot to me." As the weeks passed, Nova found herself settling into her new role with increasing confidence. She incorporated more discussions about identity and self-expression into her curriculum, using literature as a springboard to explore these complex topics. There were challenges, of course. A few parents complained to the administration about her presence in the school. Some students struggled with the change, occasionally using the wrong name or pronouns. But for every negative incident, there seemed to be multiple positive ones. Students opening up about their own identities, colleagues going out of their way to show support, and a general sense that the school was becoming a more inclusive and understanding place. One day, as Nova was grading papers in the faculty lounge, Ms. Thompson sat down beside her. "You know," she said, "I've been teaching here for 20 years, and I've never seen the students so engaged in discussions about identity and social issues. You've really made a difference, Nova." Nova smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm just trying to create the kind of supportive environment I wish I'd had when I was younger." As the school year progressed, Nova found herself becoming an unofficial resource for students grappling with their own identities. She started an after-school discussion group focused on literature that explored themes of identity and self-discovery, which quickly became popular among students of all backgrounds. Near the end of the school year, Nova was surprised to be called into Principal Dawson's office. As she entered, she saw not only the principal, but also several members of the school board.
"Ms. Chen,"
Principal Dawson said with a smile, "we wanted to talk to you about the positive impact you've had on our school this year. The board has been impressed by the increased student engagement and the fostering of a more inclusive environment." One of the board members spoke up. "We'd like to offer you the opportunity to develop a district-wide training program on inclusivity and supporting LGBTQ+ students. We believe your personal experience and professional expertise would be invaluable in this effort." Nova felt overwhelmed with emotion. I'd be honored," she managed to say. "Thank you for this opportunity." As she left the office, Nova's mind was already racing with ideas for the training program. She thought about all the challenges she had faced, but also the incredible support she had received. She thought about students like Alex and Emily, and all the others who were still struggling to find their place in the world. Nova realized that her journey had come full circle. What had started as a personal struggle for authenticity had become a force for change, not just in her own life, but in the lives of her students and colleagues. By embracing her true self, she had opened doors for others to do the same. As she walked down the hallway, surrounded by the vibrant energy of the school she loved, Nova felt a profound sense of peace. She had found her place in the world, not by conforming to expectations, but by bravely charting her own path. And in doing so, she had shown her students that it was possible to be true to oneself, to challenge norms, and to create positive change in the world. The bell rang, signaling the start of her next class. Nova straightened her shoulders, smiled, and stepped forward into the future she had always dreamed of. One where she could be wholly, unapologetically herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!